In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Boner. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Well, g'day and welcome to episode 15 of Bonafide with Luke Boner. Today on the show, it's Truckee Tuesday. So what does that mean? It means Rod Hannifey will be back. We're also going to talk motoring with James Ward, and we're going to focus on the glut of Australian muscle cars that are now on the market. Why? Is now a good time to buy or sell? Are they worth much money? Do you drive them or do you garage them and just watch them appreciate, hopefully, in value? I love Australian muscle cars and I can't wait to jump into that with James Ward. Also, tech issues with Trevor Long from EFTM. The AI revolution. It's very handy, but it can also be very, very dangerous, and we'll discover why later on. And the federal election. The ALP have had a resounding success with an increased majority, a mandate, they claim, that will get them through 3 years. And what has the Liberal Party got to do to rebuild, because it's a disaster? The Liberal Nationals are in a lot of trouble, and they've got 3 years to try and fix it and turn around. Did they back the wrong leader in Peter Dutton? Well, the polls will say a resounding yes. He even lost his seat. So we'll have a look at that. We'll talk to Jason Morrison, social commentator and an expert on media affairs, and his thoughts on the election and where Australia's headed over the next 3 years in his eyes. But first, let's hear what you guys had to say about the result. Liam said, I don't think Australia wanted to vote for Albo. They just had to. Really? There were a lot of other options, Liam. Jace said, I don't like Dutton at all. For me, it was nuclear power and various other things about him. I don't like Albanese either. We're in debt enough as it is, but I think he's the lesser of two evils. Interesting response, Jace, because all the Teals got re-elected with an increased majority. It's funny, isn't it, to see Clive Palmer didn't win one seat in the House of Representatives, and Clive Palmer is now going to drift off into the political sunset. But the majority of Australians said, let's give the ALP another 3 years. But thank you so much for your response. David said, Voldemort has the charisma. I've got to keep going. Don't edit this, Kelsey. David said, Voldemort has the charisma of a fart in an elevator, and Airbus Albo isn't much better. If these pair of numpties are the best Australia has to offer, then God help us all. It's very funny, David. Please keep these comments coming, please. Luke Boner, radioguy@gmail.com. Look, the general feeling present in the comment section on our post, excluding the choice of words from some people, and please, folks, keep it tame because there are very strict restrictions on Facebook and social media, and some things just won't get through. And there are some things that the millennials got to edit so that we don't get sued. So please keep the vigorous debate going, but just let's keep things civil. Can we do that? I reckon we can. But the general feeling was shock over how big the margin was. The nuclear power plan wasn't the nail in the coffin, and the concern about how a Labor government will impact rural and regional listeners. So stick around because we'll break it all down very shortly with social commentator and media and political expert Jason Morrison. That's coming up on Bonafide with me, Luke Boner. But let's have a look at what else you had to say on the Facebook page last week. I was on Weekend Sunrise on Saturday, and as you know, we ran out of time to talk about a topic I thought was a really good point. Engaging in rage bait. I reckon if you're offended by what you see on social media, or if it makes you cranky, don't engage. I mean, if you're walking along a footpath and you see a pile of dog turd, do you deliberately step on it? No, you step around it or over it. I mean, just don't get involved. Don't let social media make you cranky. There are too many other important things that you should get engaged with. Anyway, we posted some screenshots of my facial expressions when I realised we were running out of time. The Minister for War and Finance said, I got a face for radio. And guess what? The millennial and most of you agree. Matt said, can't argue with her. Not that I can talk. There's a reason I work in the dark too. Kathy said, you haven't got a good poker face. My facial and eye expressions give me away all the time. Dion said, my minister says I should be a comedian. She just looks at my face and she laughs. Not sure if that's a compliment. You guys are great. Please keep it coming. Luke Boner, radioguy@gmail.com. We also posted a clip from the night shift. It was around 5 years ago. There was a caller, Merv, who was complaining about circumcisions, saying they were barbaric. Folks, have a listen to this.
Why do it? You know, I mean, I'm a believer of Jesus. Jesus walked the earth. I don't know who God was, but Jesus was a person who walked the earth a couple of thousand years ago. Was he circumcised?
Yeah, probably. He was Jewish. I bet you London to a brick he was.
Oh, come on.
It doesn't say anything in the Bible about it.
Let me just tell you this. I'm pretty sure he was. And if he wasn't, theologically speaking, Jesus was a cut above the rest. We asked you guys, to you, who were the most memorable callers from the night shift? And you guys said, Graham said, Jenna from South Australia. Her partner was in and out of jail for the past 20 years. I love listening to her, and she made me laugh. We've got to find Jenna, Kelsey. We've got to find Jenna and get her on the podcast. Oh, Andy said, I love the guy who fell asleep on the phone. Yeah, that was Jace. We used to call him Jason the Snorer. He was a character. Hey, look, if you have an opinion, a memory, maybe a story to tell, please leave us a voicemail on lukebona.com.au, lukebona.com.au, or send us an email, lukebona, radioguy@gmail.com. Coming up on Bonafide, tech expert Trevor Long. Another one of my favourite subjects is Tech Talk with Trevor Long from EFTM, Everything for the Man. He's back with us after a little hiatus. And luckily, the recording of this podcast didn't clash with the Grand Prix because he would have given us the BRUSH.
Yeah.
But he's with us now. Trevor Long.
Oscar Piastri won his sixth Grand Prix. I think his fourth this year. Man.
Well done to Oscar Piastri on his fifth podium of the year.
What a great morning. I'm happy to start the day. Let's go.
I know you love Oscar. I don't relate to Formula racing. I just never have. But everyone else in the world does. What is it about Formula One racing that's always intrigued you? Because ever since I've known you, you've been obsessed with it.
It's a great question. It's the pinnacle of motorsport for a start. These cars are created from scratch. There's nothing shared between the teams other than the tyres, basically. Yeah, it's the absolute pinnacle. You're either in it or you're not. You're either good at it or you're not. And it's a heartbreaking sport, just like every other good sport, So it has its ups and downs, and it's just great to have an Aussie doing well.
Is there a simulator you can get for your own lounge room that's close to driving a Formula car?
Oh, I'd love to show you mine, which is just a couple of metres from me, but it's close in that you sit back, you're lying down in the same way. The games are amazing, but I once interviewed Daniel Ricciardo and asked him that exact question. I said, there's three things. There's the real car, There's the simulator I've got at home, and then there's the simulators that the Grand Prix teams have at their factory. And I can't remember exactly what he said other than to say, broadly, at the factory, their computer simulators are maybe 60% like driving the real car. At home, 5%, maybe 10. Like it's nothing. It's so very different because you're not driving at 300 kilometres an hour. So that sensation's very hard to emulate in a lounge room.
I've actually driven around Mount Panorama. I've never gone anti-clockwise at race speed, but I have done a hill climb, which is the other way. It starts at pit straight and then
That'd
you go
be fun.
clockwise. It was, and I actually got to drive Peter Brock's 1979 A9X Tirana, the one he won with Colin Bond in.
Sheesh.
It's on display.
They didn't do a background check on you, did they?
I had a preliminary CAMS driver's license at the time. When I moved to Bathurst, I thought I've got to get into this, and I joined the Bathurst Light Car Club. And they have these cars that are on display at the bottom of Conrod Straight in the Motor Racing Hall of Fame, and that's one of them. And they've got to start them up and run them, otherwise the engine sees. And so they had a Light Car Club day, and they lined up Kevin Bartlett's Channel 9 Camaro, the one that rolled and ended up on its roof, and there's a stack of them in there, and I got to drive the 1979 A9X Tirana. My God, that clutch, my left leg was sore for a week. I can't believe he broke the race record in that car, and I think he won by 6 laps. And it's
and he was probably fat-arming it on the commentary at the same time.
Correct. Waving to the crowd.
Oh, yeah, those were the good old days.
They were great days. Another topic for another day. I need to get you on with James Ward from Drive.com when we talk motor racing.
He's
one
a good
day
man, James. So I was with him at the Melbourne Motor Show before I went away, doing some Channel 9 stuff. He knows his stuff far better than I do.
He's very, very good, and he's a friend of this podcast too. Trevor, I wanted to talk to you about AI and this really disturbing stuff that's come to light recently. And I'm talking about the AI deep fake Penny Wong investment video. Now, as soon as I saw it, I thought that is actually Penny Wong, but that is got to be bullshit, because there is no way that any federal you would hope not, any federal politician would endorse an investment scheme. Of course, it's fake, but gee whiz, if you didn't know the people behind these things, and David Koch has been caught out, people using his image, but this AI video is unbelievably clever. Does it concern you?
Yeah, absolutely. A real Penny Wong concerns me. So a fake one, that's even worse.
Listen, mate, after the weekend, we've got 4 years. Well, no, not necessarily the Senate, but
So Gina Reinhart, Andrew Twiggy Forrest, Tracy Grimshaw, as you mentioned, David Koch, celebrities. They target celebrities. And what they're doing is they use, because a celebrity, especially a television celebrity, there's so much video of them that exists on the internet. What they do is they grab all that video. They're able to make a fake version of them, and they're able to also then emulate their voice and make them look like they're saying anything. Now, in many cases, they actually use existing video and they just change the lips. So it's actually, I'll tell you right now, the stuff we're seeing now is not even advanced. It's actually not good in the world of AI generation. So it's going to get a lot scarier, a lot worse. And the thing is, what's being done about it? Well, Facebook will tell you, and I've been in briefing calls with the people at Meta and Facebook who are working hard to mitigate these scams by identifying personalities and bringing down these things, but they're not doing enough. They're not doing enough at all. YouTube and Google need to do more. Mate, the problem is the scammers are always 10 steps ahead of the police. They're probably only 5 steps ahead of the tech companies like Facebook and Google and the like. But those companies make money receiving ads. They don't care what the ads are. So Facebook makes billions of dollars off ads because we don't pay. We're the product, right? So Facebook is not going to suddenly say, do you know what we could do? And we've talked about this before, Luke. What they could do is put in place a human block. That is, any money that is spent on their platform, someone has to physically look at and approve that ad. And they're not going to do that because that would take extra time. Right now, you can upload an image to Facebook, turn it into an ad, and have it live within minutes. It goes through an automated checking process that checks that it doesn't have too many words on it or different weird things like this. But broadly, it doesn't look for whether or not the person that's in the video endorsed the video.
Yeah.
There should be disclosures and all these kind of things. Mate, they're not trying hard enough. They're not doing enough. Aussies are getting scammed because it's vulnerable people that fall for these things, that have a small or high level of trust in those individuals, whether it's Penny Wong or David Koch, and they think, mate, and Koch is a good example actually of someone who in their real life has gone from being a credible news host in the mornings to now doing a bunch of different things in business, essentially making money. Good on him. He's doing Compare the Market and all. He's doing ads, right? Mm-hmm. So in the mind of a David Koch fan, and let's say you're 75 years old and you've got a tablet and you're on Facebook and you're scrolling through. This is what my mum does. She just scrolls through Facebook and they laugh at funny videos. But if she sees a David Koch and she's seen him on TV promoting a company, so what's in your mind? You're like, it's legitimate that he might be promoting a company. And he's made money on this? Oh, I could click on that. And then that's where the cookie starts to crumble from there. It's sad, mate.
But tell me, if you send money to the link or to whoever it is that that's doing this stuff, can't you trace who's behind all this and prosecute?
Normally, in these scams, the first thing they do is they get you and they say, look, this is the future of trading. This is not traditional Wall Street. This is cryptocurrency. So let's teach you. And they actually will teach this victim. They'll teach this victim how to create a cryptocurrency wallet. And then they'll teach this victim how to add money to that cryptocurrency wallet. And so from the bank's perspective, what they see is Luke Boner transferred his money by his own to a cryptocurrency wallet, a company. And then once it's crypto, the scammers get you to trade and send it to them. Once it's in crypto, it's very hard to trace. It's actually, it's a weird thing and I'll overcomplicate it, but crypto is absolutely traceable. We can see where every single transaction occurs in cryptocurrency. However, you don't know who owns each of those transactions. So essentially, once you make a trade, once you make a transfer, it's traceable, but not to the individual, just to the account.
And just while we're on technology, and that's really, really scary. And once again, can I stick with AI? This is a really, really disturbing story. And as the father of girls, it concerns me greatly about what's happened at this Sydney private school. A number of boys are under investigation. They were caught selling explicit deep fake images of their female classmates or girls at a surrounding school, and they were putting their faces on pornographic images and selling them for $5 or less. It's an appalling thing. I can't believe it goes on, but once again, it's using this technology.
Mate, AI generation is unbelievable. I could generate an image of a fat tiger being attacked by a small penguin. Okay, I could create that image and it would look real to you, right? And the fact that you can upload a photo and then say, create so there's a role in AI. I'm going to forget who it is, but there's a big retailer, I think in America, who has announced they are going to use their models, but they're going to make AI out of them. So let's say Luke Boner was a model. They're going to deal with Luke Boner to say, we're going to take your likeness and we're actually not going to need you to come to the studio every 5 weeks and model new clothes. We're going to put them on you via AI. And you're still going to get paid per image and whatever. But that's an honourable, broadly, way of using AI. But what these kids are doing is using, underground AI technology to say, here's an image, here's a face. I want you to make it look like this. And they're describing the picture as illicit as it is, and that's what they're getting. And, look, it's hyper realistic. The number of things I see stuff on Instagram and you're thinking there's just these models walking around in swimsuits or whatever, and I can see straight away it's AI because it's all just too perfect. The whole scene, not just the individual or the body, the whole scene. And, mate, it's unbelievable. And so this stuff is scary. We need fines. We need repercussions for people caught doing it. We need funding and resources for law enforcement to chase this, because thing is, there's a level between actual violence, and we want police investigating, and harmless acts which are digital that have mental harm on people. And we need to make sure that they are resourced as much as the physical crimes, because these things could be very damaging to the lives of young men and women, but mostly women in this case, young girls who could be emotionally disturbed by this, and we don't know what it's going to drive them to, mate. That's the worst part of this. We don't know what it's going to drive those poor girls to do.
So as technology gains momentum and gets more and more sophisticated, I get the feeling, having known you for a while, that you don't like being over-regulated, but do we need more regulation?
No, I'm a big fan of regulation where it hits the point. And you will remember more than anyone on this earth when Peter Malinowskis, is that his name? The South Australian Premier came out and said they're going to ban social media for kids under 16. I said on the radio, he's a dickhead. And I stand by it. I think it's a stupid idea that is going to come into legislation and is going to do nothing at all, because it's a stupid regulation that either is too broad or doesn't go far enough. And in this case, it doesn't go far enough because it doesn't cover YouTube. And the kids, the kids will come up with other ways of doing it. New apps will be created and kids will be on those. We need to regulate the kids' use of devices, not the use of apps. Anyway, so that's an example of regulation that's just not going to work. But in this case, you need a law, regulation that says if you're found guilty of creating a deep fake image of someone without their consent, then the fine should be XYZ. Second offence, XYZ. Third offence, XYZ. Because there's got to be a deterrent. I've got to be able to say to my sons, hey, that was a funny image you made of your mate. My son's got mates who love planes. So let's say he gets one of his mates and he turns them into a pilot. That's cool. But then what I need to say to them is, that's cool, mate, but just be aware you're really on the edge of concern here, because did you get his permission to use his image in that way?
Yeah.
We need, as a society, to be talking about, like we talk about consent in other ways, but consent relates to everything we do, and that includes creating an image of someone that you're going to distribute. Now, if you're going to create an image of a mate and send it to him on WhatsApp, fun, whatever. But if you're sending it to anyone but that person, then, your carriage service, use of a carriage service, all that kind of stuff, we've got to make sure that the law is catching up and keeping up with those things.
We saw in the recent election literally the ALP painting Australia red, an increased majority not seen for a long, long time. A Labor Prime Minister elected twice in a row, not for 21 years. But the thing because Nikki was saying, and I said, I've got to talk to Trevor Long about this. You go down and vote, and without any ID, you give them your name and address, and you then get a line put through your name and you've turned up to vote. And Nikki said, well, couldn't someone with my name and my address go and do that at 6 or 7 other polling booths? I said, absolutely.
Vote early, vote often.
Vote early, vote. Exactly. Is it about time we came up with some sort of electronic voting system so that once you vote and log on with your identification code, you cannot vote again and no one can for you? Is that the way we should be looking? Because it's a really primitive way in which we do it. And the other thing is, at the end of it, when the scrutineers have gone through all the votes and they can see Luke Boner voted 12 times in
you can't exclude any 12 votes. You don't know which ones they were.
You can't get rid of those votes because you don't know which way they went.
And if that seat wins, someone wins by 12 votes.
Which has happened. There you are. So where are we heading with our voting system? Should we go computer and electronic?
Look, I think it should be entirely electronic, because we sit here, polls close at 6 o'clock. What we should do is close the polls at 6 o'clock and then everyone takes a coffee break in the eastern states for 2 hours. Polls close in Western Australia at 6 o'clock, and then we have a big drum roll and we go, guess what? Who's the winner? Because it should be instant. It should, like, the fact that real people are still counting pieces of paper is insanity.
But there'll be concerns it can be hacked.
Totally. That's why that will never happen. Okay? So while we should, it'll never happen. Now, wind back a bit and go, okay, so what could we do to improve the system? The reason we'll never get to a point of even presenting it. Remember, you don't even need to present your ID. You just need to. I had my son with me.
It's unbelievable.
I took my 13-year-old in to vote with me, and I said, mate, watch this. And she said, what's your name? I said, my name. She goes, this is the only, they are required.
Have you voted
Have you voted already today? And I said, not here. And Harry, she didn't flinch. But then as I was walking to the thing, Harry goes, "What'd you say not here for?" I went, "Because it's a funny thing that you could vote 6 times and they'll never know." Because if I get a letter in the mail saying you voted 6 times, I'll say, "Oh, mate, my mate Luke Boner said he was going to do that. He must have gone to all the polling booths." They can't prove who did it.
And they have no way of knowing which way the bogus Trevor Long voted.
Correct. And also, it's not a known problem. So that's why it'll never change. So 2 reasons it'll never change. It's not actually a known problem, as in we haven't seen a seat go so close and then we go, hang on a minute, there was 2,000 people that voted twice and it went by 2,000 votes or whatever. And secondly, identity fear. We already have a great thing called My ID from the government. It's a great app that allows you to verify who you are in an instant, and it's completely secure. It would be brilliant to just walk up and go, it's a tick, just give me a polling thing. But it'll just never happen because people don't want to. They don't have to, hand over their ID. They don't have to hand over their information. It's, I don't know. I think we're probably 50 years away from people being even close to digitally savvy enough to want to do that, mate.
But when I was explaining it to Nick on the weekend, I've explained it many times over the last 20 years. It's so easy to scam.
Yeah.
And you turn up without any ID.
But look, it works. Like I was looking at I live in what used to be reasonably safe electorate, and it swung pretty heavy, but it still went to the incumbent. And I looked at it, there was 40,000 votes for the incumbent and there was 20,000 for the other major party, and then there was 10,000 or 12,000 for each of the independents. And you think about it, it's actually like it's a lot of people to fake vote to turn that one around. But then in a closer seat where they're going down to margins of hundreds or even 1,000 votes, if there's 10 polling booths, it only takes 100 people to vote a couple of times and you've got something happening. But again, I just think we're too honest. Australians are too honest. I don't think we're willing to do it.
Trevor, for someone who I know is very cynical, I think you're being very naive. If we did it the way you think we should, and that's all electronically, what do you do with older Australians, and I'll even include myself here, or dumbass Australians that don't know how to use the technology?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of older Australians are pre-polling now.
Yeah.
So if they're pre-polling, which isn't in itself a very different approach because you've got to go on a different day and do different things, then you know what? You either pre-poll or you electronically vote. I remember, and it's got to be 3 or 4 elections ago in New South Wales, I voted electronically. We had an app or a website called iVote, and you could use it for absentee voting. Now, you actually had to have a valid excuse or something like that, and I just made it up because I wanted to test it. But it worked, and I voted electronically in a New South Wales state election once. I feel like, it must be 10, maybe 11 years ago. But it just never happened again. Mate, it doesn't have to be for everyone on day one. This is a generational change. What you do is in the first election, you go, listen, to everyone who wants to do it this way, but you've got to vote by this date. And then you remove all those people from the rolls so that if someone turns up on the day to use their name and they don't appear, it's already crossed out. There's a bunch of things you could do. Or you make, you know what you computerise? Just the check-in process. Just the check-in process, not the little books. You computerise just the check-in process and you just make people do something that verifies their ID. But again, mate, as soon as you say verify your ID, people go, I'm not handing over my ID and where's that data being stored? And you can tell them for a million days that it's not being stored and it's being discarded. They still won't believe you, but whatever. You just can't win, mate, with people, unfortunately. What we need is a pandemic to require people to do it. During the pandemic, we quickly and reasonably acceptedly went along with the government's idea of an app. And it was a great idea. It worked, but it didn't work well enough in the longer term. But we did. We embraced it. We were close. So we kind of need an impetus like that. Like, we, you know what? If Clive Palmer had have won, then Australians would have gone, well, what do we do differently to make sure that doesn't happen again? Something like that.
What was that Robin Williams movie? Was it Man of the Hour? Where he runs, he's a comedian hosting a talk show, like a David Letterman type character. And he decides, and he's outrageous, and he decides to run for president of the United States, but it is an electronic voting system, and he actually wins. Do you remember that?
No, I haven't seen that one. I'll get on it.
Oh, get on that. It's a very, very good movie. Trevor Long, EFTM, Everything for the Man. speaking of scams,
Yeah.
on your website, you're talking about nearly half of Australians thinking that they can actually identify scams from spelling or grammar mistakes.
Well, this goes to your point about AI, right? So Trend Micro, who do internet security antivirus, they did a study of a bunch of Aussies and, average everyday Aussies, 18 to 65. And basically 47% of people say, oh, no, I can identify a scam email because, it doesn't read well, it's got grammar or punctuation errors. But the problem is the scammers now have AI. So scammers are actually writing much better now because what they're doing is they're putting their email into AI and going, make this sound right to an Australian. And then they send it to us and we believe it. So we're actually in a greater risk of being scammed because we think we know what a scam is. So we've done such a great job of educating Australians over the last 5+ years that scams are easy to detect because, the email might be wrong, the website, don't click the link, all these different things. But one of those things was it might have very clear punctuation or English grammar issues, but that's not true anymore. If you're a scammer and you're not using ChatGPT to make your emails look better, you're an idiot. And if you're a human being who's reading an email going, this seems legit because its English is correct, then you're an idiot too because you're likely to fall victim to a scam. So it's just a reminder that the reason we used to have antivirus software. Do you remember 15 years ago? We had antivirus software because people were downloading things and it was bricking their computers. That's why we had antivirus software. But then the criminals realised, why are we bricking people's computers when we can steal their information? So now they create software that sits on your computer and steals your banking passwords, for example. Last week we had 31,000 people exposed because their banking passwords were literally stolen from their computers because they had malware on them. If you have internet security software on your computer and your phone, you will be far less likely to fall victim to a scam. And that's where your Trend Micro, your Norton, your McAfee, all those big companies have that system. It's like $100 a year. It's the peace of mind that you absolutely should have. I consider myself to be savvy, but I don't trust myself clicking links. So if I've got it, you should have it. That's what's crazy to me. So the numbers scared me that, half people think that they're across it. But, it's a reminder that you've got to be aware of what's going on and everyone can fall victim.
Trevor Long is with us, EFTM, everything for the man. Trevor, last question for this episode. Years ago when I first travelled overseas with the Minister for War and Finance, and I remember asking you on the radio, what plan should I go on my phone to get the cheapest calls?
Yep.
Because you were overseas all the time. And Nikki said, no, you don't need it. Just go onto WhatsApp and everything's free and you can. And now that I don't have an Apple phone, I don't have FaceTime. So we use WhatsApp and the video link on the WhatsApp app and it's all free. And it works fantastic so long as you join WhatsApp. However, I got to thinking, how does this work for free? I mean, nothing in the world is free. And then I find out Facebook actually now owns WhatsApp. Was it 19 billion or something ridiculous that they bought it for? You don't go buying and spending that much money on something like WhatsApp without wanting something in return. Can you explain WhatsApp, what it is, how it works, and are they stealing, is Facebook stealing my contacts and my details? Can you take me through WhatsApp and what it's all about?
You know what? It's a great question that's very, very hard to answer because we in essence, Facebook makes no money from WhatsApp. However, if you dig deep enough, and you're right, they paid $19 billion 11 years ago for WhatsApp, which is simply a messaging app. It's a way for people to send a message to each other, but also call each other and make video calls. But it's expanded a little bit in recent years, and maybe this is the insight into where they're thinking with it. So, for example, now I think it's DHL. I've seen a couple of airlines. There's different people that will now allow you to receive messaging, corporate messaging from that company via WhatsApp. Benefit to company, so DHL, if they're sending package notifications, one, they don't have to pay per SMS. So any SMS message you get, whether it's from, Australia Post or Trumpeter Patriots or someone else, it costs someone money. It might be 7 cents, it might be 1/7 of a cent, but it costs money. And when you send a lot of messages, it's a cost on the balance book. So a FedEx or a DHL or a United Airlines or whoever, they're keen to use a messaging platform that doesn't cost them as much. And so that's one reason that they'll probably be paying Facebook or Meta for a business style account. So the big companies are going to pay Meta, WhatsApp, to use their platform in a different way. Then there's new, systems in WhatsApp. There's things called channels now starting where there's like, I follow the Formula One channel on WhatsApp and it gives me updates and notifications. They don't charge for that either, but maybe there's going to come a point where WhatsApp charges companies to be part of that. Don't know.
WhatsApp at one point did charge you $1 a year. They were charging, and then they just got rid of it.
I think it was rumoured, but it never happened because I've been on WhatsApp forever, and it's my number one. It's the number one app I use without hazard. It's just the number one
and
app.
Waze, you use Waze too.
But absolutely. But in my daily life, I'm using WhatsApp probably 40 times a day. Like I message my editorial team for EFTM, my family. Like we have groups in WhatsApp for our whole family, for just each child and whatever. And that's why I can't live without it. That's why I can't boycott Facebook, because Facebook is Meta and Meta is WhatsApp. So I'm not going to boycott them. I use their apps too much. But mate, I would suggest they make no money from WhatsApp. If they make money, it's very little, but it's a future thing for them. But there is probably a trickery involved in, if you're on WhatsApp and you do share your contacts, maybe they get shared across to Facebook and that helps them populate who your friends are and all that kind of stuff. Because the more information they have about you, the more money they can make from you. So if you think about your Facebook profile, if it's in any way linked to your WhatsApp and they know who you contact on WhatsApp, even if they don't know what you say because it's encrypted, that helps them understand what kind of person you are and helps them sell ads to you, man. That's what it's all about, ads.
I just can't believe that Mark Zuckerberg would spend $19 billion for an app and not expect to get something in return. It doesn't make sense.
If you want to see the wildest video podcast I've seen in a long time, watch Mark Zuckerberg with Theo Von. Have you ever heard of Theo Von?
No.
He's a brilliant comedian, very funny bloke, very, I would say redneck American, but down to earth, just an easygoing guy. He kind of comes off dumb, but he's actually very smart. Anyway, sits down with Mark Zuckerberg and he says, do you want a coffee or anything? He goes, no. Mark Zuckerberg, in this weird robotic style. Just the first 5 minutes of this podcast will blow your mind because Zuckerberg is weird. And then he starts talking about like how he's got a helicopter license. He says, what sort of car have you got? And he goes, well, you want your car to be as fast as your helicopter. Mate, you are so out of touch.
You're like a damn emperor, dude. Does that feel like that ever?
No. I wish that people did what I wanted them to do. It's like that would be fun. But in the meantime, you can have some fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would have a chopper. I don't even know what I would have. I would have an underground tunnel, even that it came right back up next to where it started.
I do have an underground tunnel.
Do you really?
Yeah.
This bloke has so much money, he's out of touch with himself. So if you want to laugh at Meta and Facebook, laugh at their CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, watch that podcast, mate. It's hilarious.
Mark Zuckerberg with Theo Von. I've written that down.
Theo Von.
Theo Von.
That's it. Theo Von. Yep.
Theo Von.
That's your lunchtime viewing, mate. Crack a cold one and sit back and laugh. You'll love it.
Trevor, let's throw some bona fide podcast love towards your podcast.
I have multiple of them. It started off with the EFTM podcast every Tuesday lunchtime. Talkback technology, mate. So if you've got a question about tech and you want me to help, just go to my website, EFTM.com, ask me a question, or you can send me an SMS, 0477 657 657. We'll get you on the show. Other than that, mate, Two Blokes Talking Tech and all the other ones that sit in there. So, mate, plenty of podcasts to keep you happy.
Trevor Long, love your work, mate. Talk soon.
Cheers, buddy.
Trevor Long, EFTM, everything for the man.
We have a caller on line 1.
Dwayne, you've got a terrible story to share. What's happened?
My father was bringing a load of scrap down from Port Augusta there on the Thursday just before Easter, and a road train was coming across the Port Wakefield Road at Inkerman going into the dump there. According to the drivers of the road train, they couldn't see through the fog, and they've cut across there, and my father's gone straight to the side of them.
Jeez.
So the problem with that story that I find a bit hard is major crash has already I've paced it out myself. My father's skid marks go for about 115 metres. And then 5 metres back from that, they've still got a cone there. That's where my father would have seen them on the intersection then. And I find it a bit strange how they didn't see him.
It's a terrible story.
These companies are getting permits to cut across these highways and do that when I first got my road train licence, I mean, like the law in South Australia here, like if there was no traffic lights, you couldn't cut across a main road or a highway without traffic lights. It seems to be some companies can get permits and sort of, just sort of do what they want. But I mean, I've had other drivers as well saying they've come along the Port Wakefield Road and also had near misses. I mean, I think there's got to be another conversation about, this sort of, the safety standards seems to be with the government just seems to be, I don't know, it just seems to be sort of lacking. You got Port Wakefield, which is probably about 16, 17 kilometres up the road. I mean, there's no reason why a road train can't turn around there safely and then turn left into the dump road. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm going to play that to Rod Hannifey when next we talk, and I'll get your answer, okay?
Yep, no worries. I appreciate that.
And I'm really sorry. Terrible story. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it quite hasn't hit me yet. I've been sort of running around trying to do things, trying to work. We've got the funeral on the 13th, so I suppose that's what will probably hit me the most. But I mean, it's just like I said, like an accident like that, it just sort of takes you back and you think, it's just so dangerous for a road train to cross. Because, I mean, that's a major highway. That's where all the road trains go, Western Australia, Northern Territory. I mean, it's a very busy road. I mean, it shouldn't be, like I said, I'm surprised there hasn't been a death before that yet. You know what I mean?
All right, mate. So, you take care, mate, and ring us back after the funeral. Let me know how you're going. If you need help, let me know.
Yep, no worries, Luke. I appreciate it.
We'll get some answers for Dwayne, and we'll certainly make sure that we look after Dwayne if he needs help. But that's a terrible story, isn't it? Next up with his thoughts on the election and where we're heading in the next 3 years, Jason Morrison. Well, on the weekend, we saw the nation having to undergo a Labor government for the next 3 years. Anthony Albanese and the ALP have literally painted Australia red with an increased majority. It took some people by surprise. Some people, nah. A lot of people thought it'd be a lot closer than it was. But what does this mean for Australia? What do we look forward to over the next 3 years? Will this lure the ALP into a sense of complacency? Will they get a little bit lazy? The ALP has asked the question, are you better off than you were before we came into power? And the opposition asked exactly the same question. Well, they didn't deliver cheaper power. They haven't solved the housing crisis. We are still scratching our heads over what the future of power in Australia will be because they said that Peter Dutton's nuclear policy was unrealistic and way too expensive. And at the moment, renewables aren't the answer. They might be down the track, but they're not ready yet. So just what did Anthony Albanese and the ALP do to garner so much support? Political analyst and Australian media legend, news hound, and a good mate of this program is Jason Morrison. He joins me now. G'day, brother.
Hey, mate. Most of what you just said about me just then is an exaggeration. I tell you what else is an exaggeration is are you better off now than you were 3 years ago? No one is better off now than they were 3 years ago. So anyone who thinks they can claim that is full of it. And I think full of it is pretty much where we start with this election analysis because...
Okay, but what did he do? Because he's got an increased majority and Dutton even lost his seat. They did something right, Jason?
Well, what they did right was they figured out that there's a lot of people out there that don't really want to work real hard and don't really want to have to fix any of the problems that they have endured, and they just sort of thought, let's just keep throwing money at people. Look, we're in a crisis in this country. I know people find this sort of discussion boring, and that is that we owe almost $1 trillion in government debt, $1 trillion. I mean, Luke, you and I are old enough to know when that figure was so tiny that no one ever talked about debt. Well, if you're not talking about debt, you're just missing the real point. This is an election that's been won on the promise of more free shit for people, more free shit for young people, more free shit for people who are older. And in the middle, and look, even the coalition going out there saying, we're going to give you cheaper petrol, more free shit. It's just mate, the country cannot afford this. And we're at this real crossroads at the moment where the election result doesn't necessarily shock me. How profound the outcome was shocks me. But that Labor won, I'm not shocked at all. I didn't really expect anything else but that. I mean, mathematically, you'd have to say the chances of a first-term government going pretty remote. And, I know we shouldn't get down to physicalities, but you kind of look at Peter Dutton and you say there were a whole lot of people who were just going to look at the poster and say, I'm not having a guy that looks like that as my Prime Minister. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people vote. But coming back to the real point, Albanese's running around and his people is talking about the mandate. What's the mandate? The mandates keep giving out free shit, and Australia cannot afford it. And there's no plan ever to pay this back. There's no plan ever. I mean, people talk about in our lifetimes. Look, you and I will be long dead. My children will be my age before we even start looking at paying down this debt. It's astronomical. And the solution here is, we've got to give university kids discounts on their HECS, and we've got to make more Medicare bulk billed. Who pays for this? I never hear this talked about. Who pays for this? This is the crazy thing about where we're at. So I'm not shocked at the election result. It was always going to be a Labor, but I am shocked that people cannot get into their heads that it's your problem. You're going to have to pay for this one day. And no one ever wants to talk about that.
It was a pretty poor campaign, I thought, from the Liberal National Party. And let me just say this, Peter Dutton virtually hid Jacinta Price, and she was the saviour of the no vote in the referendum. And I can't understand why she's still hiding in the Senate. I think she's going to come downstairs to the A grade and get a seat in the House of Reps. We can talk about that in the future if you want. And David Littleproud played very little part in it. It was all Peter Dutton, and he took, he took responsibility for the failure. But I remember it was just after the campaign started, he did a backflip on his policy on people working from home. It was going to be public servants that were going to be told to stop working from home, and he was very firm on that. And then all of a sudden, he flew the kite. The wind didn't blow it in the right direction, but it was during the campaign. Then he changed his mind. And then he admitted he got it wrong with the relationship between Putin and Indonesia. He said, no, I got that wrong as well. And when you're making up policy on the run during an election campaign, it's not a good look, is it?
Yeah, it's even worse than that. I mean, you sit and you say, Dutton did this and this and this. What does the Liberal Party stand for? Honestly, what does it say? I mean, people like me, I'm a conservative-minded person. I look back at the halcyon days of John Howard. Well, I mean, John Howard was booted out of office almost 20 years ago. And he
lost his seat too.
And he was elected almost 30 years ago. Like, it's so far back that the Liberal Party was deeply relevant and connected with Australian voters, and particularly Australian conservative-minded people. Most people who think like I do don't vote for them anymore. They eventually vote for them because when they number the preferences, they get to them eventually. But we don't touch them because there's nothing there for them. They're a wishy-washy mob who really stand for nothing, and when the going gets tough, they shit themselves. And that's the biggest problem with them at the moment. They don't really stand for things. And a great example, the working from home thing was a clumsy thing, but fundamentally, let's look at what working from home is. Working from home is about arguing about Australia's productivity. Now, I'd have to say that since COVID, the country has come far less productive. Have you tried dealing with the Australian Public Service the other day? I had a friend who owns a marina as a business. He's been trying to change the posts that go into the river at the end of his marina for 11 months. He cannot get a decision from the government because the government has to decide if he can change the posts for 11 months. Now, okay, that's a tiny, tiny example, but the country has got so inefficient. And Dutton's argument that we want to get people back from home, where they're sitting around on their computers, maybe working, but mostly not. We want to get them back into the office where they're focused on productivity. That's his argument. He couldn't mount that. Instead, he was, this is the problem. I don't stand for anything. If you're not going to stand for anything, people sniff it from a mile away. Luke, you're in my business on radio and now in the podcast world, if you got on and start talking wishy-washy crap, people are going to say, I can get this anywhere. But they want people who are prepared to stand for something. Albanese stood for something. He stood for giving out heaps of free shit to people. I mean, he stood for something. I don't necessarily agree with it, but he stood for it. But you look at the coalition, the Liberal and the National Party, but it's mostly the Liberal Party that's the problem. It has been for decades about being better at managing economies, being better at managing national security, like clumsy on the Indonesia-Russia thing, all over the place. What's their view about Ukraine, whether we should be? I mean, I don't think we should be involving ourselves in the war in Ukraine. I think it's a world away. Let's deal with our own problems. What's your view on China? Oh, tread carefully. What's your view on India? Oh, we better tread carefully. Everything's this wishy-washy crap.
And Israel and Palestine and Penny Wong's stance on that in the United Nations. I mean, what's your stance on Gaza? Do you think we're bothering ourselves too much in this sort of stuff and we should be looking closer to home?
Well, they all want to play this international game. I mean, there's nothing, I know plenty of politicians, and there's nothing they get their rocks off more on than seeing their grabs on CNN. I mean, they want to live in the world, the big world. They're not interested in dealing with local crap. They're not interested in being seen locally. They want to be seen internationally. They're going to probably make Penny Wong the foreign minister again. They make people foreign ministers because they want them out of the country. I think they've realised deep down that Australians don't want to see much of her. So let's send her overseas where she can harmlessly go about and pronounce pleasant nuances to the world about Australia's view on things. What's Australia's view on anything? Australia doesn't really have any relevant views because we have a political class that's so wishy-washy. You know, when I used to do your radio show, every good caller on that program were men and women who said stuff, and the people who said nothing you wanted to get rid of. It's pretty basic. You know, I find it amazing that the Libs are still in that zone where they don't really want to be held accountable for any particular view. And while they have that and while they hold that, they're going nowhere. So, you know, it'll all be talk for the next couple of weeks about who'll be the next leader. I mean, the next leader will be the night watchman's night watchman's night watchman. They are so far out of the game that they're probably 2 terms away from fixing this, at least. And so whoever ends up leader of the Liberal Party now, I mean, good luck, he, she. I heard someone this morning on radio saying, it's got to be a woman. I mean, that's the solution, is it? We're going to fix the Liberal Party's problems by just going and make an agenda pick. It's got to not be just a woman. It's got to be a woman who absolutely stands for something, not someone who's just going to carry the drinks and until the real fight's on. And I think the biggest problem they have, and they will continue to have, is they're half on everything. They're just half on everything, and they don't really know why. I mean, what's their view on climate change? What's their view on reducing power bills? What's their view on renewables? What's their view on paying down the debt? They have no views because they're so compromised.
Before we go on to who you think will be the next leader of the Liberal Party, and by the time this podcast drops, we probably will have one, and it must be a woman. It must be a woman. Remember, Julie Bishop ran for leadership of the Liberal Party. Scott Morrison ended up winning it, and Malcolm Turnbull quite cleverly ousted Dutton, called his hand very early, and next thing you know, Morrison won that leadership battle, and Julie Bishop there were 3 contenders, and she was the first one to be voted out with only, I think, about 5 votes out of the whole show. But let's just get back to the election quickly. Do you think it was won and lost on policies or money being thrown at people, or was it personal? Did people vote on personalities?
There's a million reasons. I'll tell you something I saw. I was down the south coast of New South Wales in the seat of Gilmore over the weekend. Gilmore was the one. I mean, I give you geographically, it runs from sort of south of kind of Kiama down to Bateman's Bay. It is the most marginal seat in the country, and it was down to Andrew Constance, who was a former government minister, and Fiona, somebody who was the Labor candidate. I went and voted. I had to vote absentee, and Constance was there handing out how to votes. And there are people having a go at him as they're walking in. You know, that could have just been a little snapshot in time. But there's people going and having a vote. I saw people handing Liberal, Labor, Teal Independent brochures, and people are screwing up their faces. And, you know, I always think the further you get away from the capital cities, the more blunt people get. They didn't mind telling you to piss off. And it was like the face was saying it. You know, I don't want your thing. I don't even want to dignify you. Get out of my sight. I've had it with you. And the votes reflected that. The vote was all over the place, and Constance won't win that seat. Fiona Thingo from the Labor Party will probably win it, and that's the most marginal seat in the country, which, by the way, is not marginal anymore. It's safely Labor. The people are angry about it. So, to your question, was it about personality or politics? It's about half a dozen different things, and there were lots of little battles all over the place. Where I live in Sydney, it used to be a safe Liberal seat. It's not anymore. It's unbelievably Labor. I mean, you used to run Labor candidates in safe Liberal seats to basically make up the numbers. They used to do it for electoral funding in the hope that the bloke might get, 20% of the vote, and that'd help him get a bit of money in. This guy in this safe Liberal seat is now almost an MP. In John Howard's old seat at Bennelong, the bloke who is the Labor member there now, Jerome Laxale, I mean, I look at a photograph of him and I cringe. He just looks like one of these quintessential idiots. Yet he has won this seat so overwhelmingly to the point where people will look at him as being ministerial future. It's just amazing, mate, what's gone on. And anybody who wants to sort of, simplify this down to it was down for this or for that. It's so complicated. But what it fundamentally is Australians are screaming out for someone who's prepared to stand up and deal with our tough issues. And our tough issues at the moment, I really think our tough issues is how the hell are we ever going to afford to pay for all this one? And how the hell are we ever going to fix a country that is so deeply divided and brings in about 150,000 new people every month into the country, because that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years. And when they arrive here, we start throwing money at them because that's the sort of place we are. We got problems, deep problems.
You mentioned the seat of Bennelong, and John Howard lost that seat to Maxine McHugh, the ABC journalist, and she did nothing. She did absolutely nothing, but they made a big hullabaloo. And I suppose if you de-seat a much-loved Prime Minister, that's going to make headlines, but she did nothing. But they did change the boundaries in Bennelong, and I don't know if it was quite a gerrymander, but they did change the electoral boundaries, and that changed the political landscape in that seat. But I look at my seat at Warringah, actually Mackellar on the weekend, right? You must remember that the North Shore or the Northern Beaches, I'll just run through. At one point, the Northern Beaches, we had Bronwyn Bishop, Mackellar, right? Yep. Yeah. We have Brad Hazard, Wakehurst. We have Mike Baird, member for Manly. Rob Stokes, member for Pittwater. And we had a Prime Minister and Tony Abbott in Warringah. The place is teal. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know the answer. I mean, I always talk about this thing called affluenza. Affluenza, when you get so comfortable with life, you start losing touch with where you came from and what you're about, and you start feeling guilty about. There's a phrase we use often about people needing to give back, because give back implies that you sort of stole your wealth or something like that. So you've got to start giving back. And I think this affluenza thing has kind of crept deeply into the psyche of well-off people. If you live in the Northern Beaches, there's a good chance you're living in a street with houses worth $4 million plus. It's not an uncommon situation. And I think there's a lot of people who've got astronomically wealthy off the growth that's happened in Australia and the fact that they live in beautiful geographic locations, and they suddenly feel bad about it. And their bad feelings about it make them start thinking, oh, geez, I feel a bit rotten about that. I don't want to feel like I'm a pig or a bigot, and I want to open up my mind to other things. And I have a feeling that is part of the attraction to these. I hate the phrase teals, as I just think it diminishes them. They shouldn't be diminished. The phrase officially is community independence. Like, I know they're all funded by Homes at Court, but see, the Liberal Party, once again, bunch of dipsticks, have not actually looked at what's going on here. What's going on? They're mostly women. Right? They're mostly women. So what's the message here? The message is saying, I think the public might want to start voting for some women. How about you go putting up some impressive women? I can
Zoe Steggall.
Inside, well, yeah, I mean, she annoys the crap out of me.
I think she's in a fourth term now.
She's an impressive person.
Might be her third.
Yeah. So, like, this is the thing. They just have this inability to look at the problem, and they want to deal because party politics is all about being Coke and Pepsi, Labor and Liberal, Labor and Liberal. Whereas the community independent, or the phrase they use, the teal thing, is actually not about that. It's about nuances, local nuances. It's about people looking and saying, you know what, I'm sick and tired of it taking me 2 hours to get out of the Northern Beaches and get to the city each day. I want something done about it. Abbott once upon a time was, the government's head kicker in the Howard years, and One Nation was the teal problem for the Liberals back then.
Yeah.
And the only thing that the Liberals could do was to try to kill it. And they basically tried to kill Pauline Hanson. They put her in jail, for God's sake.
They put her in jail, mate. They put her in jail.
Trumped up charges and whatever else. That's the only game they know in party politics, is to bring the other person down. That's the only game they know. They don't know about tackling the arguments and defeating the personalities on the grounds that there's holes in their existence. And that's the problem. We've got all these people who've never done anything in their lives who are in politics now, and all they know is how to undermine and shit can and damage people.
I'll just give you an example of what happened with me a number of years ago, Northern Beaches.
Yeah.
And this was just the way I felt, and I wonder how many other people felt this way, that because it was both our state and federal seats were so safely Liberal, nothing got done. I just reeled off all those names: Bronwyn Bishop, Rob Stokes, Tony Abbott, Mike Baird.
Yep.
And nothing ever got done. And I remember one election, Jim Ball ran as a Conservative independent. I knew he had no hope of winning, but I voted for him. Do you want to know why? I wanted to send a message.
Yep.
I wanted to send a message that I'm sick and tired. I think you guys and girls, I think you're all too apathetic.
Yeah.
Nothing ever got done.
Yeah, it's the FU thing, isn't it? People are basically looking, they're sick of the Coke and Pepsi.
But you know where I was coming from?
Yeah, I do. I get it. Totally.
Mind you, people on the Northern Beaches who don't have to commute don't want to make it easier to get here. We love being the insular peninsula. And I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
The Cronulla riots would never, ever happen at Narrabeen. You want to know why?
No train
It's too bloody hard to get to.
Yeah.
It's too hard to get to. I wanted to talk to you about Dutton's failed nuclear policy debate. It didn't happen. Yeah. In fact, in the budget reply, he only mentioned nuclear twice. I was actually really looking forward to having a vigorous debate on whether nuclear power is the future for Australia. We didn't get that debate, and I was disappointed in that.
Could I say something about that, though, Luke? Because I think that the nuclear thing was wrong, because I look at it and go, we've got so much coal, right? We're such a wealthy nation. We've got so much coal, we've got so much iron ore, we've got so much lithium. The coal, lithium, iron ore, they can all kind of do something towards our energy future. We've got so much of it, and we want to have a debate about nuclear power. We should be taking advantage of our opportunities. There are vast reserves. The whole world wants our coal. We're selling our coal to China and India, for Christ's sake, and yet we won't use it for ourselves. And I always look at this and say, we're worried about polluting the planet, right? But we still sell coal to China and India, who don't give a rat's ass about polluting the planet. And yet we could actually be using it here, and using it cheaply, and using it efficiently, and using it in the cleanest possible manner, so that, if we're worried about polluting the planet, we're actually doing the best job at minimising it. And yet we've got this crazy view in Australia that we cannot talk about coal ever. Coal is, did it ever get brought up in the election?
No, but can I just say this? We have solar panels on our roof, and I love it. Yeah. Our electricity bills are minuscule. Also, all the millennials have moved out, so that's a big help.
That helps, yeah.
Sorry, Kelsey. But I think we should be pouring money into technologies to make the batteries that can store this power better and safer. The debate for another day, perhaps, Jason.
We've got it all in the ground in Australia, and you try to dig anything out of the ground in Australia, there's 101 reasons why you can't. We are, one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, just waiting to happen, but we keep finding reasons to stop it happening, and that includes our energy. Like, we make everything so bloody expensive, and you cannot have high wages and compete with the world, and we all want high wages if you're going to have expensive energy. And our energy is so damn expensive, and nuclear was never going to fix it in any short-term way. It would fix it maybe long-term, but the irony would be we'd be building nuclear plants on top of where we built the coal plants, and we've still got the coal in the ground. It's crazy.
Jason Morrison is with us, media and what should I call you? Social commentator.
Angry middle-aged
social commentator.
That's right.
Jason, what happened to Clive Palmer? Not a seat, a squillion dollars wasted on a campaign. He now says, I read this morning that he reckons he's too old for this game and he's going to give it away. He spent millions on this campaign, mass advertising, and they failed to pick up a single lower seat and look unlikely to pick up any seats in the Senate. What went wrong with Clive Palmer? the trumpet of parrots, someone called
the trumpet of something or others. Oh, look, it's never serious. I mean, he shows up, a month before the election and does this every time. Look, I always say, I like the media industry. Thank God for Clive Palmer. He's like a cash injection. Austereo shares are travelling well, and Channel 7 shares are travelling well, and 9 shares are travelling well. I think the ABC look with some envy that they don't get the money too. What happened with Clive Palmer? Who gives a crap? I don't care. I mean, he's not even a punchline anymore. And the tragedy is the guy's actually got some good ideas. He's got a clumsy way of doing it. And if he was fair dinkum, set up some kind of organisation and finance it for 5-10 years and try to skew the views of the nation towards what you're about. Because he's not an idiot. I mean, Clive isn't an idiot. He's just idiotic things, and Trumpet of Patriots is probably the biggest one so far.
I'll let you go soon because you've got kids to pick up and a family to look after and a life to get on with. But at the dropping of this podcast, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, still hadn't received a call from Donald Trump. Now, he's received congratulations from the French, from all over Europe, but Donald Trump, his silence is deafening. I don't know whether he will receive a phone call. By the time this podcast drops, he may well have. But what do you make of this government and its relationship with the US and the tariffs?
Well, they've got to fix it. And Australia's got plenty of, I'll call them envoys with Trump. I mean, Joe Hockey, Greg Norman, Scott Morrison. The Prime Minister should use these guys, pick up the phone and say, hey, we need you to fix this. They've got this problem, and the problem's called Rudd. And, Rudd is, we see these people, these characters all the time in the media, these nasty bastards that spend their entire life, bagging everyone out, and then one day want a favour and they can't understand why no one will help them. That's Kevin Rudd. He's a nasty, twisted individual, and he shouldn't be an ambassador for Australia in the United States. They've got to get rid of him.
He wants to be Director General of the UN.
Yeah, give him that job. I don't give a rat's where he goes. Make him a Vice Chancellor of a university. I reckon that'd suit him, because they don't do anything anyway. Give him that job and get him out of the Australian Embassy in the US, because it's too important. They need to get people back on the horse fighting for Australia in Washington, because we can't afford every tiny decimal place that America screws us, hurts us so massively. We can't afford this. So Prime Minister has to make that a priority. I don't think he has to fly there and do all of that. He just has to fix that problem. But the President, frankly, ought to grow up too. I mean, if you're looking for a friend in this world, you won't find a better one than us. And
but look what he did to Vladimir Zelensky. Threw him right under a bus, and he was supposed to be a friend. Lots to talk about. I'm going to talk to Dr. Keith Suter about our relationship with the US and other things later on down the track. Jason Morrison, love your work. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your comments.
Thanks, Luke. Good on you. All the best, mate.
Social commentator Jason Morrison there, and the millennial is butting in. What? Hello, darling.
So I would like to give a young person's perspective on the election, because I really do think that this was a big wake-up call to the coalition, that young people and the issues that matter to us are in fact important. Baby boomers are not the majority anymore. It's actually Gen Z and millennials that you have to appeal to now. We're the largest voter base. And the issue with Liberals was that they did not appeal to the younger voter base at all, if you ask me.
Interesting. And Kelsey, you and I have spoken many times off air, and one of your age group's biggest concerns is the housing crisis and housing affordability. Neither party, I think, have got the answer. I mean, if you want to build homes, first of all, you need the tradies to be able to do it. You need the building materials to be able to do it. And we need more apprentices.
It's funny that you say that, though, because Labor's, one of their election promises was free TAFE. That means more tradies.
We need to encourage more tradies. We need to encourage more people to take up apprenticeships.
Free TAFE is a good way to do that, if you ask me.
But when you get a job as an apprentice, the pay is crap. And that's always been the way. So how does somebody who's indenturing an apprentice be able to afford decent wages for someone who's learning? Well, you subsidise it. Well, you're going to have to subsidise it. So would it be like a HECS debt, Kelsey? Just putting it out there. Would it be like a HECS debt so that while you're doing your apprenticeship and you want to become a sparky, a chippy, a carpenter, a builder, whatever, while you're learning, the Australian taxpayer subsidises those dreadful wages. And then when you start earning above, let's just call it 60K, call it 50, whatever, and like a HECS debt, you slowly pay that back. Is that
I think that would be a great idea. Same thing for nurses.
The other thing is the ALP haven't said that they're going to do anything about curbing immigration. And the reason we have high immigration levels is because we want people from overseas to come here and take jobs that Australians aren't taking up. A lot of Australian kids are going into universities and doing courses that actually don't create an income when they're finished, and they come out with a HECS fee unless they start earning. So we've got to encourage you lot, Kelsey, to breed, because so that we have a tax base in 18 years. And that's a tough thing because it's a really expensive thing to have children.
Yes.
Childcare, for example.
Absolutely. But you know what would make that easier? For example, Labor has invested, well, at least one of their election promises was to improve Medicare, investing $8.5 billion into Medicare. That, in the long run, will reduce costs of having children. There was a major focus on women's health as well. There was like $500 million invested into endo and pelvic pain clinics. So again, that's appealing to younger voters. That's appealing to younger women who are on the fence about having kids as well. So again, if you're asking me who's doing a better job at solving these issues, I would say that it's Labor. And I just want to make one point here. It's always incredibly frustrating when people who had university for free take up issue with, you know, the possibility of HECS debts being cut, because let's not forget that in the Liberal budget, there was tax breaks for food and entertainment for companies and businesses. That would have cost $1.6 billion at a minimum. So Labor is talking about $5,000 of student debt, whereas Liberal was talking about $20K off, you know, your boss's lunch. So can you kind of see why that type of policy didn't resonate?
Yeah, but if you look at the economics of it, and I take your point, so let's go through that. JobKeeper, a lot of companies exploited that. One of them, for example, Harvey Norman, who made an absolute killing during COVID and selling widescreen TVs and electrical goods, still got JobKeeper and made a profit. And it wasn't until unbelievable pressure from people like me that said, pay it back. Because Jerry Harvey wasn't going to at first. And eventually he did, but he did it too late. The other thing is, if you do a university degree and you come out with a job that is a high-paying job, when you get that job, you're going to be paying more tax. You're going to be in a high tax bracket. Both parties failed to address something that's really important, Kelsey, and we can talk to Scotty Phillips or Shane Oliver about this. We need tax reform, and there's a thing called bracket creep. So people who are earning X amount of money, but with inflation going up and wages not going with inflation, they find themselves in a higher tax bracket, but then they're actually not earning anymore. So we need to address bracket creep. So there's a few things there. What do you make of Kelsey's comments? Let us know. Luke Boner, radio. By the way, it is the Luke Boner podcast with some input.
Wait, just question. The JobKeeper coronavirus thing, that was introduced by the coalition, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I tell you something else, Kelsey. Maybe we need an Elon Musk type person with a big stick.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
With a big stick to clean up the NDIS ripoff. Because the NDIS is a very, very good program. And you and I know someone close to us who worked for someone who was ripping it off, and there are thousands of people.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Thousands of people ripping off the NDIS. People who need it should be getting it, but there are people who are blatantly ripping off the NDIS, and it needs to be really policed a lot better. Anyway.
Absolutely no to Elon Musk. Doge did not do anything. Didn't they stop after like 100 days and we're like, oh, we're done now?
An Elon Musk type character that can go into waste like the NDIS so that people who need it get it and those people ripping it off get prosecuted. There we are.
Yes,
Luke Boner, radio guy. Example. That's it. It's the Bonafide podcast, not the Millennial podcast. But you know what? I love your thoughts. Coming up, motoring with James Ward. We're going to talk about Australian muscle cars, something a millennial or a Gen Z would have no idea about. One of my favourite segments, one of my favourite people in the world is James Ward, the content director for drive.com.au. He's just come back from an overseas rort. I'm sure it was a rort. I'm sure he hired a car and did a review of it so he could claim the whole thing on tax. He joins me from within his vehicle right now. Safely parked, I'll have you know, but there he is right now. James Ward, welcome back to Australia. Where'd you go?
Mate, I went to Italy and I was in Sicily and we went down to Malta, which is interesting. I'll touch on Malta in a second. But do you want to know what you said in the intro? I may have done that before, where you rent a car as part of a holiday and you sort of go, well, if I write about this, it's technically work and the tax man is okay. And you want to know the worst thing is I booked a Fiat. Little Fiat SUV, thinking I'm in Italy, we'll do the right thing. And of course, when you get to the rental place, they give you whatever they got. And I got a Citroen. And of course, the one brand that leaves Australia in 2024 is bloody Citroen. So I can't write about it because it's like, oh God, it's a car that will no longer be ever sold in Australia. But
now that I have my own podcast and I do a motoring segment, I can do a car review and I'll claim it. Don't you worry about that.
This is it. Get in the game. It's a wonderful industry to be a part of. But look, I drove around Sicily. I tell you what, if anyone listening, you want to do it, what's really interesting to me is that whenever you travel overseas, you get a whole bunch of people saying, oh, can't drive there. It's dangerous. Oh, they're all crazy. Yeah, okay. There's a little bit of loosey-goosey rules on the road. But if you can drive in Australia, I counter, you can drive anywhere in the world. We are as bad as anybody here. And what was interesting, Sicily, beautiful sort of island to drive around, bigger than you think. You got some great motorways. You can sit on like a $1.30, $1.40 all day, and it's quite happy. But we went down to Malta because it's only like a 90-minute ferry ride from the bottom of Sicily down to Malta. And Malta is an old Commonwealth colony, so it's right-hand drive cars driving on the left like we do in Australia. And what was funny there is everyone's like, oh, you can't drive here because we're on a different side. I'm like, mate, we're from Australia. We're okay. I got this. So I had a little Hyundai i20 to zip around Malta in. And it's the only way to do it. Having a rental car on holidays, I always recommend because you can see and control so much of what you do. But yeah, driving in Malta, it's just like, driving in Australia, a little bit loosey-goosey, but certainly more than capable.
And of course, if you go to Italy, chances are you could probably rent a Maserati with the lovely Triton emblem up the very, very front. I actually want to talk to you about the Maserati Levante. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
Down the track, because I've got a friend of mine who's bought one and someone else who's an acquaintance got one because they just love the idea of driving this beautiful Italian car with the lovely leather and the Triton symbol up the front. But I was reading somewhere that you may think you're in a really lovely upmarket Italian piece of specialness, but they're actually Jeeps, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. It's the Maseratis are part of the Stellantis group, so they've got a lot of shared components with Jeeps. And look, obviously, you get the Maserati engines at the high end. You get that Nettuno twin turbo V6 that they feature in the MC20 supercar. And look, you get materials and fit and finish in the Maserati is quite beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of underpinnings that are not quite as bougie as the Maserati badge would have you believe.
Not quite bella.
Not as bella. But I tell you what, you see a Maserati driving around, and actually where I'm sitting, there's one driving, it's a Ghibli sedan just driving past me now. But you do see bigger cars like SUVs and things on the road in Australia all the time. It's so rare to see some of those larger vehicles in Italy because most people just have a small car for those small roads where it makes so much more sense. But yeah, look, I've had a couple of drives in the Levante. It's good, and you've now got the smaller one, the Grecale, and you've got to kind of ham up your Italian pronunciation when you're talking about your Maserati Grecale. Yeah. It just feels a little bit over the top, but it's kind of fun.
But do you have to wear leather driving gloves?
Oh, you do, and you've got to wear loafers, and you've got to wear a cravat. You've really got to lean into it.
Yeah, exactly. We might talk about exotic overseas cars that are overrated and maybe even underrated on another episode. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed that a lot of classic Aussie muscle cars are popping up for sale all over the place. James, why now?
Yep.
And is it a good time to buy them? I've seen a number of Blue Meanies.
Yeah.
I've seen some XA Falcons. I've seen, you don't see many GDHO Falcon Shakers, but there are lots of classic Aussie muscle cars that you see for sale now. Are people maybe cherry picking that now is the time to sell as the market peaked?
No.
Would you buy one?
It's the opposite. I think people are selling because they need to. So the market has actually dipped quite a bit from where it was. Like we saw... Obviously, during COVID, all bets were off. It was the complete Wild West, and you were seeing people paying 7 figures for some of these cars, which was kind of nuts, really. It all settled down a bit, but some of the higher prices that we saw for some of these rarer cars, you'd see them go to auction, and they would get high 6 figures or into the low 7s for some of these very special vehicles. That is kind of a thing of the past. So the cars you're seeing pop up for sale now are arguably they are people needing to free up some cash, maybe, change the collection around a little bit because it is a really good buyer's market. Because like you said, some of these cars, they don't pop up very often. There's only a finite number of them. And we're seeing some interesting stuff hit the market. And one of the things we were talking about it sort of off air over the couple of weeks, Australian muscle cars are only really relevant and valuable in Australia.
Now look at this, James Ward. He's like Superman. He's got into a telephone booth and got changed.
Mate, the miracle of technology is all we could say. I've changed spaces. I'm back inside now. I had to, for listeners, this is the reality of being at the peak of podcasting in Australia. Occasionally you need to move your car. And so I'm back inside.
Just to get back to our conversation on Australian muscle cars that are for sale at the moment, I sent you a picture and a story on a John Goss special that is for sale. It was the prototype John Goss special Falcon hardtop, and also John Goss's Ford Australia company car.
Yeah.
Back in 1975. It's now owned by Goss's mechanic Grant O'Neill. Has been owned by him for 48 years. It's now for sale, and they reckon that it'll get over $250,000, maybe $280,000. But one thing that intrigues me about this, and our listeners can see the photo of this on our socials. It's a 1975 XA John Goss Ford special in the white and green paint.
Yep.
Those John Goss specials were 4.9 V8s. They had the 302. This one is a 351 Cleveland. The 5.8 351 Cleveland V8, not the 302 4.9, which the John Goss special cars were. How can this be?
Well, this is it. This was his prototype car. So at this time, and it was the same with the Cobras as well. So the reason that Ford was kind of at it would have been a pretty fun place to be, Ford in the early to mid 70s, because you had that. The XD came in the late 70s. That was a global. A global car, a bit of Australian design, but it was fundamentally a global platform to move Ford forward. So this was the last hurrah of the Australian big coupes, because obviously XD was only in a sedan and a wagon. The John Goss car, obviously to commemorate the Bathurst victories, they were able to kind of I don't know, look in the parts bin and say, well, what do we want to do? What can we do to make these things a bit of a special edition vehicle? And we see it all the time now. Like, you look at what Porsche do. They roll out a special edition like you put on a change of underwear, and they look at what they've got in the kit bag, and they go, well, let's put the motor from this and the front bar from that and the bodywork from that. This is what Ford was doing. But I think as part of the development, JG himself is actually there working at Ford. He's put a 351 in this and thought, you know what, that might, and it may have been a bean counter thing where putting the bigger V8 made it just that little bit more expensive. They wanted to keep the price down. Maybe they just wanted to make it a little bit more measured in that model. But the fact that the prototype car, his own car, has come up for sale is amazing. And we've seen this before when the what was it? The chicken coop. So it was I think it was an XA as well that was found in a barn. But again, it was like a prototype for the Phase 4, the mythical Phase 4, which never happened because obviously a Phase 3 GDHO was in the X-Series cars. To move into the XA, there was supposed to be, well, XA-BC, there was supposed to be a Phase 4. It never happened, but occasionally some development was done and that car got into a production car that was sort of a prototype or a Ford company-owned vehicle that has found itself onto the market. So this particular one, as you say, it was John Goss's car. It is a one of one, right? And it was specially built. It's been in the care of his mechanic for nearly half a century. What a car to have as part of Ford history, but as a collector.
Would you buy it?
Do you know what? If I honestly, at the moment, if you had spare money and you were and look, buying a car like this or any kind of classic car, you need to have passion for it. If you're just doing it for numbers and and trading on the equity, just buy Porsches and Ferraris. If you've got some passion here and you care about that Australian history, yeah, you know what? Now's a really good time. It's like we said before, people are freeing up cash because it's an interesting market. There are maybe other investment opportunities for people to move money out of cars into property, into a business, into something else. So now is a bit of a buyer's market, not just at the collector grade, at kind of anywhere. And I think if you really want that slice of Australia, and something like this comes up, it's a one-of-one opportunity to get.
I'm going to tease our listeners. James Ward is with us, drive.com.au. I remember years ago you did a special on recreating and rebuilding a Mad Max Pursuit V8.
Yep.
And it's a great story. And I actually want to, next time we chat on this podcast, I want you to take us from the beginning to the end of you recreating. It had the zoomies up the side. It had the police box at the top.
Yeah, it had everything. It had the
fake supercharger red lever on the
fake blower motor, which was a washing machine motor to fire up the belts. Yeah.
One of my regular callers on the night shift on Triple M was a bloke. I'll tell you about this later, but he was a young 17 or 18-year-old apprentice back in the day, and he actually worked on the one they had in the movie.
So cool.
And I've got a photo of him in my man cave with the car, and he framed it for me, and I've got it in the man cave. Anyway, and he signed it. But I'll show you that. I'll send it to you. But we'll talk.
Yeah, we should tell the story because, and we'll do that in a later ep because it was fascinating to me, like the way it came about as a project for me to be involved with, but then even the people that I met throughout the project, the connections back to the original film and even the new film. Because remember, they were looking to film Fury Road in Australia, but then where they were going out the back of Silverton, where obviously Mad Max 2 was filmed, there'd been a massive amount of rain and it was green. And so it didn't fit the whole wasteland kind of look. And they moved the whole production to Southern Africa. But there was a crossover point where some of the vehicles and the development was done in Australia, and there was an interesting story there. So, look, I would love to tell that. We'll do that in a later ep.
We will indeed. But I told you I had an interesting John Goss story to tell you, and I'll leave you and my listeners with this. Look, it's not that great, but I find it quite amusing. So John Goss was it a 1-2 finish in the green Jaguars of Bathurst?
The exit of Valvoline Corner, and this the final lap of the 85 James Hardy 1000. The pressure is now off his shoulders. numbers, although he might be losing the seat. Would you believe this? The man who instituted the 1-2.
Is he a pro?
Johnny Goss is going to engineer the 1-2 JRA Jaguar finish to Australia's great race. Chalk up 1. John Goss, the winner of the James Hardie Classic for 1985.
He came to Bathurst in 86 as the reigning champion of Bathurst, and he had a co-driver by the name of Bob Muir. Now, at this time, I'm renting a Daniel Boone-style log cabin 20 minutes out of Bathurst on the Fremantle Road. And what everyone does in Bathurst, if you can, is you rent your house out to a team and you can actually earn your rates for the year for 5 days. And so if you've got a room or you've got even better, a house to rent, why not do it? So anyway, I had links with Bathurst City Council, and at that time, the lady who was in charge of the Bathurst 1000 Festival, her name was Helen King. Anyway, through my connection, she said, John Goss's co-driver, John Goss is looking for somewhere to stay. I said, how does the reigning champion of Bathurst find somewhere? Well, it was for his co-driver. So anyway, it was going to be Bob Muir. So I had to drive, you know Bathurst pretty well. I had to drive to the restaurant, no mobile phones, to a restaurant that was then called the Stagecoach Restaurant on the corner of George and Howick Street. I don't know if it's still there. And there was John Goss and his wife and Bob Muir and his wife having dinner, sitting in one of those booths. And I met him. And so I had to pilot him out 20 minutes out of town. And we'd bought food and we'd cleaned the place. Little did I know that one of the cats I had shat under his bed. and it was a tomcat, and it was horrendous. But anyway, we fixed that and put Glen 20, and I was very, very embarrassed. And it's a 20-minute trip, and then down a very long, ungraded dirt road to get to this house. And so they checked in, they've gone upstairs, and everything's going fine. And all of a sudden, we heard footsteps because the place creaked. And there's Bob Muir with his wife and their bags packed. And they're walking back out towards their car. There's no lights going up this driveway. I said, what's wrong? And he said, we can't stay here. I said, was it the cat shit? And he said, no, it's too quiet. He said, all I can, because we had a dam, he said, all I can hear are frogs and crickets. We can't stay here. And so I had to pilot him all the way back into town to find a public phone booth for him to ring John Goss for him to find somewhere else to stay, because where he was staying either stunk of cat shit or he said it was too quiet. Maybe both, but there you go. That's my John Goss story.
That's a pretty peak summary of going to Bathurst, isn't it? It either stinks of cat shit or you just can't stay there. That's
too
brilliant.
Quiet. Yeah, he was a nice bloke. He was a very nice bloke. All right, James Ward, always good to talk. Go to drive.com.au or watch the Drive television show on Channel 9.
Yeah, we've got lots coming up. And the call out here is, if you are in the market and you have got a bit of, you're thinking maybe now's the time to invest into Australian muscle cars or a bit of Australian automotive history, now is a great time. And remember this too, Luke, cars don't attract they don't attract to capital gains tax. So if you're buying a car as an investment versus if you're buying a property or shares as an investment and you sell it for a profit, you do not pay capital gains tax on a collector car. So there you go. How's that?
I did not know that. Thank you.
All the more reason to go and to keep some of this amazing Australian motoring history alive.
James Ward, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. You got a question for James, Luke Boner, radio guy at gmail.com. Jump on our Facebook page, Luke Boner, that radio guy, or go to drive.com.au. Coming up, the truckie friend, Rod Hannifey.
Got your diesel running, head out on the highway, missing all the roadkill. Another truckie Tuesday. In the gate when you're changing from lanes, do not brake check me in my prime. Australia moves and it's thanks to you guys. Trucks to get there on time. Listen to the air horns. Dip your lights from high beam. HPL that help you. Thanks to Rock Hannifey. makes Australia stops. They're driving around the clock. Never, never giving up. Drive safe tonight. Drive left-hand side.
Here we go, episode 15, Bonafide with me, Luke Boner, and one of our regulars is Mr. Truckee Tuesday, Rod Hannifey, former president of the National Road Freighters Association and internationally acclaimed road safety expert, joins me again. Rocket Rod, 10-4, good buddy.
Good morning, Mr. Boner, and how are you?
Well, it looks like you're out on the road. It sounds like it. Where are you?
Well, I'm just driving around with my son. We've just grabbed a coffee and we're heading home.
Very precious cargo.
Yes, I've been out shopping for the daughter. It's her birthday on Monday.
Is it? It's mine next Saturday, the 10th.
There you go.
And my mum passed away, as you know, last year. And for all my life, my birthday, 10th of May, has paled into insignificance because it's always on the same weekend as Mother's Day. So
yes,
Mother's Day is way more important.
Yes, and early this year.
Exactly. Anyway, Rocket Rod, lots to talk about, and you have been in a very, very controversial position recently over a new weighbridge and the cost blowout. We'll talk about that coming up. But everybody I speak to has been talking about the massive muck-up on the M1 last week.
The M1 Pacific Motorway north of Sydney, which is closed southbound after a truck spilled metal onto the road. It's left as many as 50 cars with punctured tyres near Gosford, forcing them to pull over on the side of the road.
Southbound M1 Pacific Motorway from Ourimbah to Mount White. Traffic was in chaos. It was pouring rain. People are on their way into the city of Sydney. And a truck spilled about 750 kilograms of metal pieces over about 30 kilometres of road. The incident brought traffic to a standstill, left at least 300 vehicles with punctured tyres. It triggered a massive cleanup effort. And you know what? We won't know the real cost of this until maybe down the track sometime, because people were arriving home seeing that their tyres were slowly deflating, and they are claiming as a result of this. So we won't know exactly how much damage has actually been caused by this for maybe some time now. Rod, the big question is, how often does this happen? How did this happen? And what are the insurance implications for those people who are affected? I'm sure you've got some thoughts.
Mate, I've only ever heard and seen one other time where a truck had dropped a whole load of nails on the Newell Highway. And one poor bloke in his B-double ended up with, I think, about 6 or 7 flat tyres. It was found, it was over a section, and they were fairly big nails. My understanding is all of this stuff has been tiny, tiny little pieces, which, as you say, many people won't even see and may have got home and then get up the next morning and find a flat tyre.
Yeah.
So the piece I read said they have been doing it for some time and they've never had a problem before. And, of course, the driver wasn't aware. As you say, in those conditions, he wouldn't have seen tiny little bits of metal falling out the back. I wonder how eventually they pulled him up and stopped him. But the ramifications are serious. But I suppose the absolute good thing out of it, for what that might be, is that no one was badly injured or killed. And you can imagine that someone could have easily had that happen by having the tyre go quickly flat and putting them in a position where something went wrong and caused a major accident. So in the scheme of things,
in pouring rain,
really good. Yes, it's really good that nothing like that happened. They say that their insurance is going to cover it, the trucking company. They've apologised, said their insurance will cover it. But, of course, as you say, people are going to find out later, and all of the emergency services were put to extreme lengths, and there were still delays. What I was listening to on the radio last night was that some people would still have to wait hours to get someone out to them. So, mate, a terrible thing that happened. Obviously, they've got to find out why, But thank goodness no one was badly hurt.
You know, I was catching a taxi into Channel 7 for Weekend Sunrise, and it was on election day. And the taxi driver was chatty. And I thought, oh, here we go. He's going to talk about who you're voting for, why, what's Peter Dutton done wrong, or what's the Prime Minister done wrong. And no, all he wanted to talk about was the spillway on the M1 motorway. And I said, well, from what I hear, the trucking company's taken responsibility and will pay the insurance costs. And he says, I wonder how many people will claim tyre damage who weren't even there.
Well, yes, but you're going to have to show a tyre, so you're going to have some proof, like a docker that you went and got your tyre fixed and it had a piece of steel in it. So let's hope people do the right thing. I know that's a bit like our rose-coloured glasses and everybody should be nice.
But he raises an interesting point. Look at how many people do indulge in insurance scams. And I know there'll be people rubbing their hands together saying, I could use some new tyres. I'll say I was on the M1 between Arimba and Mount White.
Yes, and by the time we've discussed this, hopefully they've put some sort of a claim limit on it and everybody's responded and everybody's got sorted, mate. So the best thing is nobody got hurt, but they've got to find out why. They said they've done it for ages. And the fact that they were all small pieces, when I initially heard it, I thought something must have fallen out and broken up. But it seems to be scrap that has been put through a machine and all reduced down to those little pieces, which is obviously why they get a decent load of it on the truck. And, yes, they've got to find out where it came from and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Do you reckon there'll be fines involved?
I suppose that the first thing that they would normally try and ping you with is insecure load.
Yeah.
Now, how do you secure a million pieces of metal other than put them in a tipper? I don't know that would apply, but there was certainly the incidence of, the congestion and all that, and there have been people charged with things like that in the past. It'd be interesting to see whether they can prove it was simply an accident and it should never have happened, or whether it was some form of negligence that, one bit got stuck under the edge of the tipper and he didn't see it and that's how it leaked out or something.
There was an occasion that I remember on Sydney's Roseville Bridge, and again, it was a rainy day and the speed limit going down and up is 80. And there was a truck that lost some building materials and two cars hit it. And that could have been fatal. That could have been serious. It wasn't, thank God. But it does happen. Obviously, if building materials or a box or anything falls off a truck while it's in motion, there's got to be an inquiry and find out why it wasn't secured.
And that's why we have load restraint laws. The thing is, it's a load restraint guide. It doesn't have common sense involved in some ways. You certainly look at some things and you see people driving down the road doing the wrong thing, like they've thrown stuff in the back of the ute. At one stage, there was a big blitz on utes because they didn't have a cargo net across the back, because it doesn't matter if it's an empty bucket and it blows out of the back of your ute because the wind's got to it and then hits the windscreen and somebody goes, and swerves across. Those things, even from that level, can have severe consequences if people don't do the right thing.
Let's scale it down a bit. Let's talk about someone going to the tip in a ute or a hired trailer or whatever. I remember driving along Monavale Road once, and I was about 3 cars back from a ute, and it was a very, very windy day, and he had tree branches on the back of the thing, and his tarp flew off and went onto the windscreen of the car behind him, and a couple of huge branches also came off. Now, that's a smaller issue than this. However, it could have been just as serious. So let's not just talk about truckies here. Let's talk about education with securing a load. And hockey straps don't cut it, do they?
No, they don't. And you've got to have, the right materials, whether it's a rope or a strap. Ropes are capable of holding the load as long as you recognise what that load is and what the load capacity of a rope is. You can buy the little ratchet straps now in most of the service centres and things if you're going to secure something like that. But, geez, I tell you what, the amount of them I see on the side of the road, Luke, whether it's the fact that people haven't done them properly or they put them over a sharp edge, and I think that might be part of it, because most of the ones you see on the side of the road have all the material has gone sort of all, pear-shaped, and they've obviously sat it over something, thought she'll be right, it's rubbed on its way down the highway, and then the thing lets go. And not only do you have the possibility of the load coming off, then you've got the strap laying on the road with the sharp pointy bits on it and things like that. So, mate, it's something that everybody that carries any form of load, and as I say, whether it's an empty bucket in the back of your ute or a can rolling around in it and it comes out and hits a windscreen, you could kill somebody simply because you can't be bothered to secure your load properly.
Rod Hannifey is with us, Truckee Tuesday. It's I got a funny feeling we haven't heard the end of this. I hope we have. Just thank God no one was seriously injured. Now, I got some audio I want to play. This is from a listener, Malcolm. Have a listen to this.
Hey, Luke. It's Malcolm here. I love the podcast. I was listening to you on 2GB before the long weekend. You had Rod on the phone as well, and you guys were talking about falling asleep behind the wheel. I can tell you that I have done that. I was working at Sydney Airport at the time, had just left the car park, came up onto Marsh Street. I had blacked out just before hitting the intersection where the M5 intersects with Marsh Street. Made the choice to go through the intersection as I knew I couldn't pull myself up in time, and ended up getting T-boned by another car going through the intersection. No one was hurt, luckily. Ended up with a neg driving charge as a result. Yeah, wanted to share this. Thanks, mate.
There you are. It can happen to anyone. Rod, when I did an overnight radio program that you were part of, I remember getting nearly all the way home one day, and I thought, how did I get here? It's a frightening thing.
Mate, it is. And I was considering this during the week. The concern that I have is everybody is different. And we've discussed about people particularly going away on long weekends. And when you get to that point, Luke, where you either A, wake up and say, geez, I've just been asleep for a second, or you swerve back onto the road, where do you stop? And that's why our argument for rest areas, for the green reflector bays, for stopping bays, there must be more of them or a safe shoulder, because if you're lucky enough that you've just had a micro sleep or you've had a yawn or like you say, I turned up somewhere and thought, geez, how the hell did I get here? You've got that far, but then the only thing you can do to manage it realistically is stop. You've got to get out of the car, have a stretch, walk around the car, and then you might be okay to drive to a safe place to go get a motel or go into a parking bay if you're a truck driver, whatever the case may be. But from that point where you first recognise the problem, if there's nowhere to stop, how the hell do you do? What do you do? Just sitting in the car, you're only going to go back to sleep again because you've reached that point of tiredness. If there is nowhere for you to stop, Luke, what do you do?
But it comes down to education. And you know when you're tired, you know when you're not concentrating, and you know when you're thinking, geez, I'd do anything to pull over and have a sleep. Well, you've got to do it. You can't push through it. You cannot push through it. I can't stress it enough. So I'm glad that our chat on 2GB got through to some people and has triggered that response from Malcolm.
The average motorist doesn't get any of that information given to them as part of their licensing, and until they're put in that position, they probably don't even think about it much, do they, Luke?
No, they don't. It's really important. Now, we also had a caller earlier on in the podcast, Dwayne. Now, he's a truckie, and I want you to have a listen to this.
My father was bringing a load of scrap down from Port Augusta there on the Thursday just before Easter, and a road train, according to the drivers, the road train, they couldn't see through the fog, and they've cut across there, and my father's gone straight to the side of them. Yeah, I find it a bit strange how they didn't see him.
Rod, what do you make of that?
Mate, every accident's a tragedy. We'd all like to be able to get in any vehicle, go, drive safely, get home safely, and get back. There's so many factors that can affect that accident, let alone any other. We weren't there, so it's hard afterwards, and that's one of the reasons why the ATA and others have been asking for proper accident investigation. Not to say that Rod was a bad driver and did the wrong thing, but maybe there were other factors that until we know what they are, can't be addressed. We know that our road toll has increased this year. It's certainly not going the way we'd like it. We've got to find solutions. But in a chat with a mate the other day, currently their solution for solving the road toll is increase the fines, certainly in our industry, to make it harder. And yet they've done those things for, the last 10 years or more, and yet the toll goes up, Luke. So we need to find some real solutions. To do that, we need to have the problems. We need to know what the issues are. We've discussed education of motorists. We've discussed it, we need better training for truck drivers and things like that. And yet we haven't really touched those. The government has sat back and said, we'll increase the fines and we'll bring in this and we'll bring in that. And people are dying, Luke, and that's no good to any of them. It's no good to their families. It's no good to those of us who live and work on the road. And we really need some solutions, mate.
Rod, we had a listener send this audio clip in about highway signs. Now, just have a listen to this.
I think some people might be reading this sign wrong. This is located at the top of Greenmount Hill. And what the sign actually reads, all vehicles, 22.5 tonne GCM, gross combination mass or more, must do 40 kilometres an hour down the hill. So what it's actually asking isn't about what weight you are currently coming down the hill, it's asking what your truck is rated to. And if your truck is rated to 130 tonne, technically, even in bobtail form, you should be adhering to that 40 kilometre an hour speed restriction. And you need to keep that 40 kilometre an hour restriction until you pass the little sign that says end of heavy vehicle speed zone.
Now, Rod, this is what Andrew said about it. I assumed this only applied if your CGV or current gross vehicle mass was over the indicated weight specified on the sign. However, this isn't the case, and what the lady is saying is correct. So even if you're running bobtail, and you can explain that to us, Rod, just the prime mover without any trailers, you still have to adhere to the 40 kilometre per hour speed limit.
Right. My first thought, Luke, is that the lady's wrong. Because GCM is how you are. It's not rated GCM. So if you're in a bobtail prime mover, that means you have no trailer on the back. The truck would weigh approximately, let's say, 10 to 12 tonne, depending on the combination, the type of truck. Now, if you're going down there, the braking capacity of that truck is for a truck that would have that many axles and a full load on it, and let's say that's 23 tonne. And they've got that mass there at 22.5. So that's your average rigid, your average little truck with a single steer axle and two axles at the back is allowed to go to 22.5. So if you've got a semi-trailer, you've got more. But if you had an empty semi-trailer that weighed 15 tonne and it was light, technically it would not apply because it is looking at the braking capacity of the vehicle. Now, if that bobtail prime mover is rated at 130 tonne, it doesn't have the trailers there for the braking capacity, but it has ample braking capacity. And the reason the sign is there is for people who come over the top of the hill, launch down there at full speed, ride their brakes, they get hot, they run out of brakes, and then they have accidents. So whilst it says GCM, it's GCM as it applies to the vehicle there on the road, not the rated GCM if you had 4 or 5 trailers behind it. And in the early days, there were people that had their F-150 Ford or whatever were complaining that they were getting tickets. Now, I don't know whether that's been changed, Luke, because they were seen to be a large vehicle. I don't know how that camera inspection works, but my understanding is it says 22.5 tonne GCM, gross combination mass. So that's if you have a vehicle with a trailer, combination mass applies to both those vehicles, not just a towing vehicle. So as she said, it's rated at 130 as a capability. But if you go down there and you exceed 22.5 tonne, they want to make sure you have either sufficient braking capacity or you operate at that reduced speed so that you don't exceed the braking capacity of the vehicle and burn your brakes out.
Now, Rod, in other news, here's a story, and I got this courtesy of Big Rigs magazine. Victorian drivers are facing steep fines for not slowing down for towies and roadside crews. This is an old one. This has been around for a long, long time. New laws passed last week mean that Victoria drivers must slow down to 40 kilometres an hour for a wider range of roadside assistance crews from July 1, or they'll face a pretty hefty fine, $960. Now, the 40 kilometre per hour slowdown rules previously only applied when emergency vehicles and Vic Roads incidents response vehicles were stopped roadside. But extended rules were announced by the state government last Wednesday. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because I used to receive a lot of phone calls from people who were working on the roads and from tow trucks that were saving vehicles that had broken down or were left stranded, and people weren't adhering to the road rules surrounding towies and roadwork vehicles because they weren't seen as emergency vehicles. And some tow truck drivers were even saying, well, okay, what we need to do is we need to have the red and blue flashing emergency lights like Ambos and Light Police have, so people take us seriously. Anyway, your thoughts on all of this?
But in South Australia, the law has always been 25 kilometres an hour for police. That one came in Victoria first, and in the very first instance, it applied everywhere, and it was a blanket thing even on the highway. They brought it into New South Wales, and it was then modified so that if you were in above an 80k limit, I think it was, or there was something on the highway. I'd have to go back and have a look now, but I didn't see any reference in that Victorian change to the law as to whether it applied on the highway, because there were a number of incidents where people have come round the corner, seen the vehicle, slammed the brakes on, and had someone run clean up the back of them because they didn't know what the hell was going on in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to look into that Victorian one to see whether there's a reference to the speed limit. There was even a consideration at one stage where should that police vehicle be on a service road, so technically not even on the highway, did it apply then? And what happens when someone comes along and they see their vehicle over there? Now, we've discussed the same thing with roadworks, Luke.
I was going to get to that.
Those people.
I was going to get going.
We want them safe. We want the roads fixed. And as long as there are people working and everything, and I only had this conversation with a driver during the week, mate, there's got to be two sides to the argument. Now, in roadworks specifically, if they're going to put the signs up when they're working, we should slow down and we should make sure they're safe to fix the road for us to be safe. But the law is not enforced when they're not working on the road and they leave the signs up all night or all week or all month. And then, of course, what happens is people who run that same road every night think, oh, those signs have been there for a week and there's nobody here. Oh, well, I won't slow down. And then you come around the next corner and they're actually working. So for the road workers, want them safe. In America, they don't root about, Luke. If you go through roadworks and you kill a road worker in an accident, you go to jail for 10 years.
Wow.
But they also have higher speed limits in roadworks. So I've just got to check this Victorian one, whether it applies on the highway, and we've got to make sure that people use common sense. As I say, Luke, we've got to start selling it, mate. We should make sure everybody buys some common sense, and we'd halve the road toll in a week.
Okay, but the really frustrating thing, and I've experienced this, well, I haven't got a fine, but I've spoken to people who have, when you're driving along a 110-kilometre piece of freeway and all of a sudden the speed limit goes down to 40 and there's a sign saying roadworks, changed speed conditions policed. You might see a sign that says something like that. And the frustrating thing is, if you do get pinged, okay, but people are sick and tired of getting pinged when there's obviously no roadworks going on.
Yes, I've just actually got an email back from Transport for New South Wales regarding some signs that were put up on the Sturt Highway. They were left there for months. I had a couple of somewhat cynical truck drivers say that, well, they get paid while those signs are in place. So the longer they leave them there, the more money they get paid. Let's hope it's not that stupid, Luke, that people's lives don't count as much as getting paid extra to have a sign up on the road. That extension, we've all seen some poor bugger broken down on the side of the road. Now, if we're going to go to common sense and fair go, mate, I've got to say to you, so many times you are driving down the highway, you'll see a car has pulled up. They might have a flat tyre, they might be tired, but they don't make the effort to pull as far off the roadway as they can. They seem to think that white line, that fog line, is like a 6 foot wide brick wall, and that's going to make them safe. And they pull 1 inch off the road when there's a shoulder there that you could have pulled 2 metres safely off the road. It's better for you. It's better for someone who comes out to you in the event of a breakdown. They can get clearly off the road. And, mate, we know that people have died because they've just pulled their car up, they've left it on the edge of the road, they don't leave their lights on at night, they don't put their hazards on. I saw it yesterday, mate, a caravan parked on the side of the road in what was an edge lane, no hazards, no nothing, and they've got the door open and they're messing around in the back of the van. Now, people have to do their part. And the other one is, of course, if you pull up on the side of the road, for God's sake, turn your headlights off. People pull up and leave the high beam on and blind someone coming the other way because they're getting out to have a pee or whatever it might be. How do we get people to do the right thing, Luke? Like, we're talking about people's lives. We're not talking about you kicked your toe because you didn't look where the door was. We're talking about being on a road that everybody shares. We're talking about responsibility, that having a license means you have to do the right thing. And we're talking about other people's lives because you simply can't think past, I've got to be there 10 seconds ago.
Some more good advice. I learn something every day. But you and I, back in our radio days, have had phone calls from people who are just really pissed off because they're getting pinged for going through a 40 zone because of roadworks and there's nothing going on. And I remember, I think we got a call one morning, Rod, from a road worker who said, well, the signs are there. We may not be physically out in the road, but it means we haven't finished the job. The road is still very soft and the shoulders are still not finished. It's dangerous. You must slow down, even if we're not there. Is that a fair argument?
In one way, yes. But only yesterday went past a set of roadworks. They've got 80, 60, 40. They're not even working on the road. They're working on the side road. Now, you couldn't go round that corner at 40 kilometres an hour, so you're not going to be going around there at 100 kilometres an hour to turn left, and yet they've gone and put 40K signs out in place. Now, there's got to be a balance. If we are held to account to do the right thing, then if they're not working on the road itself or the road works is off the road, then those signs should be covered at night. They're getting paid. They're getting an hourly rate. Doesn't hurt them if they go up the road and cover 3 signs each way. It's not going to kill them. And people then will respect the signs knowing that work is in place. And I think if we could find somewhere in the middle, Luke, that they did the right thing, then I'm hoping that more motorists will do the right thing as well.
Rod Hannifey is with us, Bonafide with Luke Boner. I hope you've got your Nature Bee on your Rod. I hope you hear that?
Well done.
That's a full jar. Power Pollen Nature Bee. And if people want to get involved with the Bonafide podcast, leave us a voice message, send us an email, and Cookie is going to give away for our best emailer or our best voice message some Nature Bee and some Power Pollen and some soap. So if you want to leave your name and address, well, do so and you might win some. Good on you, Cookie.
He's a top bloke and I'm going to have to ring him. My son's going to talk to him about having some in the gym.
Moving on. And I know, and we'll finish with this, you have been ensconced in a lot of controversy over the last week over the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator opening a new inspection station on a major freight link in New South Wales. The new inspection station is located on the Golden Highway, about 5.5 k's east of Ballymore, between Dubbo and Dunedoo along the Golden Highway, and it'll be operated by the NHVR. Now, what's happened here?
Mate, it was initiated by Transport for New South Wales a few years ago. They put out an announcement that it was going to cost $7 million to build a weighbridge. At the time, I said, well, geez, that'll be pretty flash. We must surely be getting a sauna and a gym for the drivers and some really nice facilities for that sort of money. Now, 2 years on, the site is complete. Went past it the other day, pulled up and had a look. I had a mate who had, at that time, asked the question, geez, that seems pretty expensive. We never got a reply from that, but he asked in Parliament last week, Well, did it actually cost $7 million? If so, why? The response to that was, there was a blowout. It went to 11, and I believe now it's 11.9 million. So that's $12 million they've spent on a weighbridge. They then were seeking additional funding for operating expenses. And, mate, it's a slab of tar. It's a demountable hut. It's not even a single plate weighbridge where you can weigh a triaxle group. You've got to weigh each axle individually. It's a couple of variable speed road limit signs. So they change from 100, which is the limit there for normal traffic, to 80 when the bridge is in operation. And yes, there was some street lighting done at that intersection because it's just where the Mudgee Road comes out onto the Golden Highway. So they've spent $12 million, Luke. And
wow.
The other thing they said at the time was, we've got to stop the dangerous trucks getting into Dubbo. So by that inference, you're allowed to be dangerous till you get there, but not when you get into Dubbo. It's like half an hour out from Dubbo. It's in the middle of nowhere, so the staff are going to have to drive all the way out, drive all the way back. And, mate, I came down the Mudgee Road the other day, which then joins onto the Golden, and it is abysmal. It is dangerous. It is rough. It is uneven. It is narrow. And, mate, that is the only alternate route out of Sydney if the Orange Road is closed. If they'd spent that $12 million on that road, they would have saved some lives. But they've now spent $12 million. Then they want more funding to operate it. We don't know whether they're going to be there once a month or once a week. The level of traffic on that road is not, from my point of view, justifying that amount of spending. And I can't get them to put up green reflectors unless they cost nothing. I can't get bumps in the road fixed. There's a bump on the Newell Highway, mate, I've been trying to get fixed for 12 months. It is a savage, severe impact into the truck. I talked to a driver the other day. He actually saw a caravan tear the axle out from under the caravan when he hit this bump. I've complained there's a set of skid marks, so somebody's hit it. And yesterday, not only did I see stuff all over the road, so somebody's hit that bump and the load's come off or shifted, spilt on the highway, but they are actually out there looking to finally, I hope, fix that bump. Now, I said, why can't you fix that bump? Why is that on a major national highway for 12 months? And we're talking about 1,700 vehicles a day on that section of the Newell, and every one of them hits that bump. We don't know if that impact breaks something there or if it fails to the point that the next bump you hit is what causes it to fail. This is so severe, Luke, and they put rough surface signs on it, and their answer was, we're waiting for flood funding. Now, if they can, to my point of view, spend $12 million on a weighbridge and leave something on the road that people can be killed by, there's something wrong.
Why did you get into so much trouble over this?
Because I've raised the question and asked it, and I want to know what that money went to. I've showed the photos to a couple of people, and I've said, can you see? I can't see $2 million. Now, I'm not an engineer, Luke. I didn't build it. The fact that where that bit of road, there used to be always sort of white residue on the side of the road, and I often wondered what it was. And I was talking to a mate who lives out near there the other day, and he said it's soda water. It's coming up out of the ground. Now, maybe they're going to turn around and say, well, we started digging it up and there was this stuff and we had to go. Then you built it in the wrong bloody place in the first place. Probably should have been closer to Dubbo. It can be bypassed. There will be drivers who will find a way around it. For the volume of traffic, is it justified? Could it have been better spent and actually saved somebody's life by fixing the Mudgee Road? And, mate, if that they come back and they say this is what it costs and this is how much, and they can justify it, okay, that's fine. You've done it with your intent. We see it differently. But if somebody can't come back to me and say, here is why this cost $12 million for a bit of bitumen, a few lights, a weighbridge and a demountable, then, mate, something is wrong, and that's why we can't get the roads fixed, because that money isn't being done properly. We're not getting the value for it, and it should have been used elsewhere.
I want to talk next week about distractions for all of us. And there's an ongoing debate. We've just been through an election and we have been absolutely flooded with call flute, how to vote signs from people. I find them annoying and distracting. But there's also discussion, debate about where we place advertising billboards, how big these billboards should be, the electronic billboards that flash and move, which are distracting. And on a very serious note, and it's a somber note, however, there is also debate in some states as to whether or not to make roadside memorials illegal because they're a distraction. That is, often, on my way to work and back, there are 3 or 4 trees with flowers and wreaths and football jerseys attached to the tree where someone has come to the end of their life through a fatality. I think that they're a good thing because it reminds you that someone died on that corner or into that tree, and it does slow you down. But a lot of people are arguing now it's a distraction because you're trying to look at it and understand it or read the sign that's on it, and it takes your eyes off the road. We'll talk about that next week, can we?
We certainly will, mate. We certainly will. And look, let's just finish on that point. You said there about lights in roadworks. We've spoken about bits of road. We've talked about the numbers to ring. Now, I have at times rang a road authority and said, your lighting for your roadworks is blinding every single vehicle approaching those roadworks. So how are we supposed to see? The flashing bright lights at night can be so bright you can't even see the bloody workers. So how do we keep them safe? And, mate, we've got to find that proper balance in the middle that keeps them safe and those signs are effective, but not just, as you say, shoved out there to say that I complied with the requirements, but I made it so unsafe that it's actually worse than it should have been.
Right, Hannifey, always good to talk to you, always informative, always interesting. Now, keep both hands on the wheel, keep your eyes on the road, or as Jim Morrison of the Doors once said, keep your eyes on the road and your hands upon the wheel. We will catch up. Please, if you've got any questions for Rod Hannifey, email us, lukeBoner@radioguy@gmail.com. Leave us a voice message. Check us out on Facebook, Luke Boner, that radio guy. And Rod, we'll talk again soon.
We will, mate, and we will have to get you in the truck at some stage, Luke, to see it from our point of view.
Tenfold good, buddy. Thanks for listening. Another jam-packed episode coming out on Friday. Please stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to debate with the millennial, her personal phone number
Absolutely
is
not. 567891011.
There it is.
There
I
it
dare
is.
to ring it. Ring it. See who answers.
Give it a call.
See who answers.